Hey guys, this video is going to be something a little different from the usual fare. I've got most of a script done for this, but a lot of it is going to be off the cuff. This is just something I really wanted to talk about, since I've been thinking a lot about video games lately. I've gotten a subscription to PlayStation Now. I'm revisiting a lot of old franchises I've played in the past. I did those God of War videos earlier, and recently the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X were officially announced. The ninth console generation is finally approaching. And I can't help but think of how much of a waste the eighth console generation was. There's always exceptions, but so many of the big releases were remasters, re-releases, and remakes, and those that weren't were sequels, prequels, and spin-offs of older franchises. In terms of new IPs, what did we get in the last 8 years? Bloodborne, Watch Dogs, Destiny? Like I said, there's exceptions, but a lot of the new IPs have been cratering disappointments. So I want to take this time to look back at the last two console generations and pick some of the best examples of what gaming is capable of. I'm willing to call a mulligan on the 8th console generation, but the 9th gen has to step it up if the industry wants to survive the law of diminishing returns. The first game I want to talk about highlights a problem in a lot of AAA video games. If there's one persistent ailment in the AAA market, it's this incessant need to be more like movies. Video games are not movies. They have very different strengths and very different weaknesses, and the more games like Last of Us, Uncharted, and Metal Gear Solid try to be like movies, the more the gameplay just suffers. I'm not to say that, video games shouldn't have stories or that they shouldn't try to have a cinematic approach to storytelling. I'm just saying that there's a balance to be struck, and perhaps no game in the last 15 years has struck that balance as well as Batman Arkham City. Yes, it's a sequel, but it's one that builds on top of the original, in a time where video games like Elder Scrolls and Mass Effect and Dragon Age are just gutting feature sets with each installment, becoming less and less like the games that made them popular in the first place. Arkham City takes everything from Arkham Asylum and just builds on top of it. More ways to traverse, more ways to fight guys, more gadgets. All the gadgets return, there's just more of them. All the enemy types return, there's just more of them. The balance between combat, predator, and exploration, puzzle solving, it's all here, it's all back, and it's all bigger and better than ever. And even the story, like Arkham Asylum got a lot of praise for its story. It's very, intimate and nuanced and atmospheric. And Arkham City is just as atmospheric, just as nuanced, just as intimate, but just bigger. More is more in this case. And the story is very good, much like Arkham Asylum. It's about one man's fight against this disease called crime that is infecting his city. It used to be basically quarantined in Arkham Asylum. The inmates would escape, and then Batman would catch them and throw them back into the, asylum. But now it's actually starting to infect the city. You got Arkham City, which is this walled-off part of Gotham that has been turned into a giant prison camp. And you have this A-plot where Batman is trying to, find out, the mystery behind Arkham City and why Hugo Strange is doing the things he's doing, and what he plans to do with Arkham City. And then you have the B-plot, which actually ends up taking a lot more time, which is the Joker poisoning Batman subplot and Batman having to find a cure. But it all weaves in and out pretty seamlessly. It does, kind of grab you by the nose and pull you along a little bit in some places. It is a very linear story. It is turbo-linear. The level design is pretty good, which helps kind of create the illusion that you're exploring a lot more. But it is tight, it is cohesive, it is concise. It's not a branching, narrative. It is very much the story that they wanted to tell, and it does admirably by creating a character that would naturally do this and is very stuck in his way. He's not, he's not a flexible character like a Geralt or guy from Infamous, blanking Cole McGrath. He's not like a Cole McGrath where he can like flip flop between doing good stuff and evil stuff. He's always good. He's always going to make the right choice at the end, and the only meaningful choice you have there is kind of the order of operations. Like, do you keep doing the main quest line, or do you help out some political prisoners? Do you take a break from the main quest to catch an assassin or a serial killer, or play Riddler's games to save the hostages he has, and that creates this very good story-driven atmosphere that does not get in the way of the gameplay, and the gameplay helps facilitate the story, and the story helps facilitate the gameplay, and it's this really entertaining feedback loop that makes it worth coming back to time and time again. Whereas something like Metal Gear Solid 4, it's so bare bones gameplay wise that the only entertaining aspects are in the cutscenes, which you can just watch on YouTube and get the exact same experience you'd get holding the controller. For the second game, I want to talk about something a lot of people don't realize is that one of the things that probably holds video games back from being considered high art by art snobs is that they're also toys, and there are plenty of games that are like toy boxes. What's a fighting game if not like an excuse to take two cool characters and make them beat the crap out of each other without the need of any story? Racing games, sports games, they're all kind of toy boxes, and you have fighting games especially are basically toy boxes, even ones that have stories, even ones that have decent-ish stories, like Tekken 3 I think had a decent story. They're glorified toy boxes. You buy them, you have all these assets and stuff that you can play around with, and then the game mechanics are just the way you play around with them. It's basically, the different button inputs and stuff are like the articulation on action figures. But in the last decade or so, the toy box aspect of games has become a lot more prevalent and a lot more just more. Because it's with modern day technology, we're not as limited as we were in the 90s and 2000s, and perhaps no game exemplifies how fun a video game toy box can be than Minecraft. Need I say more? Like, Minecraft, especially on creative mode, is literally a toy box. Like, you have your player character, Steve, or whatever. You can dress them up however you want. Tons of costumes that you can get. Some of them you have to pay for, whatever. It's like at each except, batteries not included, each sold separately as the toy commercials go. But it gives you all these options to play around with, all these different blocks and devices and weapons and tools, materials, and just lets you go nuts. Lets you be creative. And, we've seen this happen a lot more with, Super Mario Maker got really popular. Little Big Planet, which the first Little Big Planet came out before Minecraft, but kind of paved the way. Dreams on PS4, which I haven't gotten around to playing at all. But it's made by the same guys who did Little Big Planet. And not to mention all the Minecraft clones, like 7 Days to Die, Ark Survival Evolved, all these sandbox games that are sandbox in the purest sense of the word, where it just drops you in a world with a bunch of materials and a couple systems to play around with, and just lets you go nuts, lets you create your own adventure, lets you create your own story. Because that can be just as engaging as something like Arkham City. Like, I remember the first time I found a dungeon in Minecraft, and exploring it and trying to piece together, like, how did this get here? I was making my own fun. And Minecraft is a game where you do have to make your own fun. That's probably the downside to toy box style games like this, is you kind of have to create your own story, create your own, like, goals. with a story-driven game, you have objectives and you have story beats they have to hit and combat encounters that you have to do and such. Whereas Minecraft, if you don't know what you're doing, you're not gonna have a whole lot of fun. You have to have some kind of plan or goal in mind and then do it. And that's perfectly fine. And that's why Minecraft is like the best-selling game of all time now, because it's literally for everyone. You can't say that about other pieces of entertainment. You can't say that about... There is no movie made for everyone. There is no book made for everyone. There is no TV show made for everyone. Minecraft is so ubiquitous and so diverse in what you can and can't do, that everyone can find something to like and something to strive for when playing Minecraft. The next thing I wanted to talk about is games as community. This is what I don't know much about. This is something I'm not a fan of, really. As the internet becomes a bigger part of our lives, we're being connected through a lot more than just, cultural things or political ideologies or location. Back in the day, you lived in Missouri your entire life. You only interacted with other Missourians who had very Missourian-centric worldviews. And now, with the internet, everyone's written puff pieces on how the internet connects us globally, and how, even someone like me who has very seldomly left the state of Missouri, like I have friends in Texas and Vegas and California and New York and Australia, the UK, France, all because of the internet. And games are, much like not video games, much like actual like sports and things like chess, Monopoly, tabletop games, whatever the case may be, games are a place where you build communities, and multiplayer games have become very popular because of that. As soon as we found out how to do the netcode and how to connect people's, consoles and computers together, multiplayer games were always going to mop the floor. Like, I hate Call of Duty and all, but even I have to admit that the multiplayer in that game is good enough to where it was always going to be successful, because it's just such a universal thing to do. It's, you have fun with friends, and video games give you a way to have fun with friends, and the more options you have in that fun, the more mileage you're gonna get out of it, and the more fun you're gonna have, and the more characters and weapons, the more different each game is gonna be. And all this is to say that the third game on this 10 list is Fortnite. I have very little experience with Fortnite. In fact, when I decided that one of the games I have to talk about is something that brings a community together, I actually went on Twitter and asked, and someone brought, a couple people brought like Destiny, Call of Duty, Minecraft even, because, there is online multiplayer on that as well. But the one that kept sticking with me was Fortnite, and maybe it's because, my sisters are familiar with Fortnite, and Fortnite is one of the few games of the last 10 years that has pierced the zeitgeist, pierced the veil, where non-video game people know Minecraft, they know Fortnite, they know Mario. Your grandma who's never played a video game before might not know what a Call of Duty is. They could. Call of Duty, I think, is big enough to have kind of pierced that as well, but Fortnite's just everywhere, and it has been for a while now. It's standing the test of time, even though, like, I'm not a fan of it. I have to admit that between its special events, the customizable characters, the gunplay, the different weapons, and the building stuff, straight out of Minecraft again. All that stuff has made it a massive success, and I can't take that away from it. I tried really hard not to have Fortnite on this video, but I had to. There's just no other multiplayer game out right now that is that present and has that many players and is connecting that many people. For the fourth video I wanted to talk about, this is more up my alley, and probably a palate cleanser for talking about Fortnite and multiplayer games. Power fantasies. Video games can satisfy power fantasies. Video games don't have to have these super involved plot lines. It's cool if they do, but they don't have to, because it's the second person narrative thing that keeps people playing. It's the fact that you are the one doing this. You're the one saving the princess. You're the one fighting the aliens. You're the one taking on the gods. No other game is as cool of a power fantasy as God of War 3. This was an easy pick. It's one of my favorite action games of all time. I already did a review of it. You already know what I think about it. Not only did I do a review of it, but I did a 3-part stream series on it, even though the second part got taken down because Aphrodite. It makes you... It's cathartic. Video games can be cathartic. And I think there are a few games that are popular right now that are kind of handling that, including God of War 2018, to some extent. And one of those games, another one of those games I'll talk about, soon. But, making people feel strong, making people feel good while playing the game, is not as easy as it sounds. Like, you put one clunky mechanic or one thing that could lead to frustration or mess up the camera system, then people are going to be a little more hesitant to come back to it and relive the challenging parts. Not to say God of War 3 is a super easy game. There are challenging bits in it, but it's very well balanced, is what I'm trying to say. And it's got a lot of enemy variety, and it's got a lot of ways to take on those enemies, and it's just a lot of fun to toy around with. For the fifth game I wanted to talk about, this is kind of the inverse of satisfying a power fantasy, and that's creating a challenge. Video games used to be really hard. And they were made hard, not for difficulty's sake, but because if it wasn't hard, then it would only last an hour, if that. So they wanted people to feel accomplished and feel like they were getting their money's worth out of their product. And difficulty has kind of come back in video games. Throughout the 90s, the only difficult thing about games like Ocarina of Time or Mario 64 were the controller, just struggling to walk with the N64 controller. And throughout the 2000s, video games were just easy. Like, it's actually really hard to die in a game like Metal Gear Solid 3 or Resident Evil 4. And so it's really nice to see challenging scenarios coming back. And obviously the big, the grand poobah of that whole movement has been Dark Souls. I don't think the challenging aspects of Dark Souls is its best aspect. I think a lot of it does borderline on being unfair. I think as far as Dark Souls go, it's level design, boss design, weapon variety, character customization. A lot of that is a lot more worthy of praise than its challenge. But games should be satisfying, it should be goal-oriented, it should make you feel like you're accomplishing something, it actually goes hand in hand with the power fantasy in that aspect, where you feel accomplished. It's that hormonal kick you get in your brain, the endorphins when you take down a challenging boss fight. That's something that Dark Souls has that something like, say, the Lego games don't. The Lego games are way too easy. It's impossible to die. Uh, having a fail state, having a game over screen, or a point where you mess up and have to go back and redo stuff. That creates this challenge in your mind, and it creates this just one more level. Just I gotta beat this boss. I gotta complete this level. I gotta get just a little further. And the next thing you know, you've been playing for like 5 hours straight. And that's something that Dark Souls is a master of. Now, it's a very challenging, not all that fun game when you get down to it. But because of the way it handles its challenging aspects and it handles its variety, it handles its level design, it really just pulls you in and really hooks you. For the sixth game I wanted to state, and this is something that hopefully it's coming back. It's a little too soon to say. Video games used to be like simulations. You would have your more obvious flight sims, like Wing Commander and stuff like that. You'd have life sims like The Sims or more recently Animal Crossing. I guess would probably fit into that a little bit, but video games, more than any other medium, allow you to do things that you can't do in real life. Thief allows you to be a thief without actual repercussions from real life law, and it does a really good job really grounding you and making you feel like a thief. Same thing with the older Call of Duty games, back when Call of Duty wasn't like so overdone. It made you feel like you were just a soldier in this bigger war. But a lot of that fell away because of, the more cinematic leanings of Metal Gear Solid and Uncharted. But I think it's coming back, and it's coming back thanks to Red Dead Redemption 2. Red Dead Redemption 2, first and foremost, is a sim. It is a Western sim. It's not first person. There is a first person mode, and it works very well. But it's this attention to detail. The graphics are amazing. The ambiance is amazing. The enemy AI is well done. The animals act like real animals. Like, I remember there's this one part. I was by a river, and I saw this hawk, or maybe it was an eagle or something, like just swoop down and snatch a fish out of the water. And then I shot the bird out of the sky, walked over to it, and got both the bird and the fish and put them in my inventory. And it's the little things like that make Red Dead Redemption 2 feel so real. It's the footprints, the mud that builds up on your boots as you walk, the facial hair that grows throughout the game, that you can shave and groom and style and stuff, in a realistic way. The various outfits you can get, the way you reload and have to recock the repeater in order to fire again, the way your horse behaves, the way you have to groom your horse every once in a while, you have to, the way you have to eat and sleep and drink, in order to refill your cores. Like, there is no Just Cause style regenerating health where you're just a bullet sponge and all you have to do is sit behind a crate and wait for all the red splotches on the edge of the screen to go away. No, like, you take damage, you do recover damage, but recovering damage takes away from your core, which is its own meter, and the only way to refill your core is to eat food. and rest and actually like sleep and stuff. And those survival mechanics, even though they're very simplified in Red Dead Redemption 2, are so much more than what we get in Assassin's Creed or Skyrim or Grand Theft Auto. uh, I know that with Grand Theft Auto, that's by design. Grand Theft Auto is supposed to be more like balls to the wall, crazy action, Michael Bay explosion fest. Red Dead Redemption 2 is supposed to be the game series that Rockstar takes a lot more seriously and tries building a lot more nuance out of, and it does that well. And that's why Red Dead Redemption 2 is so beloved, and why so many people, even people who aren't a fan of its sim aspects, are like, yeah, it's a sim. You don't, it's not for everyone. You don't have to like that it's more of a sim than a straight up action game, but the care and attention to detail is there, and I hope that more game studios take notes, especially Bethesda. Like, Elder Scrolls 6 really needs to have a similar system with its survival mechanics. For the seventh game I want to talk about something that has branching narratives. Video games are uniquely qualified to do kind of that choose your own adventure genre in a more cohesive way than in books. And there are games that have attempted this. I don't think there's a whole lot that have attempted it well. Because they either run into binary morality where, you make one choice at the beginning and then it takes you on one, pathway that you really kind of gotta stick to in order to reap any real benefits from that choice. Which makes every single subsequent choice you run into kind of pointless. And then you have like the Mass Effect school where, there are binary choices, but there's also more nuanced choices, but all those really amount to is who gets the cameo in the next game and pick one of three colors. Branching narratives are best done in isolation, in singular games, and love it or hate it, I think Heavy Rain is the best example I could come up with. The choices in Heavy Rain, for the most part, matter. It affects the way the ending happens. There's characters that can just straight up die. Too soon, and then if they die, then they're not gonna be there for the climactic thing, and the story just goes on without them. Like, that's kind of impressive. There is no such thing as really a game over screen. There are fail states, though, that make you feel like, wow, I really messed up and got the FBI agent killed. And it has a lot of different side characters that you interact with, that their opinions of you kind of get shaped by how you handle the situation. And Heavy Rain really did have a bigger impact than I think a lot of people realize. I know Indigo Prophecy, which is the prior game Quantic Dream did before Heavy Rain, probably deserves maybe even more credit than Heavy Rain. But I have seen a resurgence in point-and-click adventure games, like Telltale. Everything Telltale made. Thank you, Heavy Rain, for that nonsense. I actually don't like how Telltale handles it. I think Telltale handles it because of the episodic nature of those games. It really handles it in a way that actually bottlenecks the choices a lot more than Heavy Rain does. And honestly, even though it's in isolation, same thing happened with Until Dawn, where each choice, none of the choices mattered except for like who gets to be in the final scene and not, and then one choice can like one wrong move can end up getting all of them killed anyway, and just none of it ends up mattering. Heavy Rain feels like it matters, and it's a good story. A lot of it comes from like it just being a decent story, a well-written narrative that happens to have all these branching pathways and questions and decisions that you have to make, and then the Simon Says QuickTime events to to make sure you're paying attention and trying to be engaged. So yeah, with the power that games have now, I think experimenting more with branching narrative pathways is a good direction to go, if for no other reason than it separates it from movies, because movies will never have the branching narrative pathways. Like, the closest we'll ever get is Clue, where we had the 3 different endings, and we could pick which one we liked the most, even though one of them was clearly better than the other 2. But anything that creates the illusion of choice is better than not having any choice whatsoever. For the 8th game I want to talk about also gives you choices, but this is less story-driven choices and more gameplay-driven choices. And that's Deus Ex, particularly Deus Ex Mankind Divided. So, on top of just being a well-written game that looks great and feels amazing to play, Deus Ex is a masterclass at giving you all sorts of different options. You find one way through a level, you found one of 12. And it's all kind of dictated by how you use your upgrades. Like, do you focus on a hacking upgrade so you can just bypass any security lock and safe and vent and whatever have you? Do you focus on a more conventional strength boosters? There's one that allows you to punch through certain walls, which completely changes the way that you can progress through certain levels. There's the Icarus landing, which, makes it to where you don't take fall damage. There's the jump boosters, which allow you to clear higher heights and climb on ledges that you wouldn't otherwise before. There's upgrades for strength that allow you to move objects that you wouldn't allow to move before, which can then be used to create these impromptu ladders. And it's this kind of free-form way of progressing through these multifarious levels that make Deus Ex Mankind Divided a game that you can return to time and time again, just to see what other ways you can progress through a level. And it's not just the movement that is affected by this, it's also the combat. Like, there's a lot of upgrades for stealth, there's a lot of upgrades for your guns, there's a lot of upgrades for your armor. Like, there's certain skill trees that allow you to just become a bullet sponge RoboCop murder machine, and then there's others that turn you into the freaking Predator, where you can just turn invisible and just start gutting people without them even noticing. And almost every single level is completely ghostable, where you can just completely go through it without alerting anyone. And those kind of options really matter. Those kind of options are really great, and it takes a lot of effort and a lot of work to do that. And in Deus Ex Mankind Divided, it's not even limited to combat and exploration. Dialogue. A lot of games lately have had the dreaded dialogue wheel, where none of your responses really matter. Final Fantasy VII Remake has this, where you have 3 different dialogue options that you can do, and all 3 of them get you the exact same result. Fallout 4 will have a dialogue wheel thing where the difference is whether you are nice about it, mean about it, or a clown about it, and the humor is cringy, but it always gets you the same result no matter what. Mass Effect 3 will get you a lot of the same results, and just determine who lives and who dies being the only real difference, or who is willing to help you and who isn't. But all that boils down to Paragon and Renegade, so it's very binary with that. Same thing with The Witcher, where it's a dialogue wheel, it's just in list form instead of in an actual wheel. With Deus Ex, it's a gameplay mechanic. You get these dialogue options, and you can completely circumnavigate combat encounters. You can completely circumnavigate entire parts of the game just by talking to the right people and saying the right things to them. And as you're talking to them, Adam Jensen is building these psychological profiles, and you have to kind of pay attention to these different emotional indicators in order to find out which response is going to be the best. And when you pick a response, it shows, but before you pick it, it shows the entire response. It shows everything that Adam Jensen is going to say. And you can pick based on that, because, maybe you don't want to talk your way out of this. Maybe you want to piss him off so that you have an excuse to kill him. That's your choice. And that's a choice Deus Ex Mankind Divided gives you all the time. Like, the fact that the dialogue sections are a more engaging part of the game than combat in Metal Gear Solid 4 is mind-blowing, to say the least. And that is really what puts Human Revolution, and especially Mankind Divided, over the top for me, and why they're two of my favorite games of all time. For the 9th game I wanted to talk about in this video, I asked people on Discord and Twitter, like, what do games do? Like, what do games do differently than other mediums? And the main thing is interacting. It's goes back to that second person narrative thing. It's you're the one doing this. And so the more freedom games give you, the more they feel like games, and the less they feel like movies or TV shows. Which, anything that plays to video game strengths is a good thing. And I've talked about different forms of freedom here. The dialogue freedom and gameplay freedom of Deus Ex, the narrative freedom of Heavy Rain, the creative freedom of Minecraft, but freedom to explore an entire world, just having it lay out in front of you, and have like objective markers for people that need them, but the ability to turn them off and just find your own path and discover all these things. No other game in history probably has done that as well as Breath of the Wild. In so many open world games, and I love open world games, even the kind of not as great ones, like Just Cause 4. I've been having a lot of fun with Just Cause 4, as many problems as it has with its open world design. But in so many open world games, especially Assassin's Creed and even Red Dead Redemption 2, the pathway is always about where to next. So it's about, okay, which of these millions of icons on the map do I select and head to now for a useless collectible or a side quest line that might be boring, might be bad, or might actually be entertaining. Breath of the Wild doesn't really have any of that. You discover things. You don't get... You don't climb a tower. You climb a tower and unlock part of the map, and it's a topographical map. Like, it shows you where all the rivers and forests are, and different elevation zones for, like, mountains and hills and stuff. But it doesn't show you where any of the stables are. It doesn't show you where any of the villages are. It doesn't show you where side quests can be started. It doesn't show you where weapon chests and enemy camps and any of that are. It doesn't show you where all the Koroxes are. You have to find that stuff yourself. You have to go on this path of discovery to find all this stuff, and a lot of it's useful. Like Korok seeds, after a certain point they stop being useful, but they are useful to that point. I played the game for probably 20 hours before I even knew that the Master Sword was in the game. Like, I played for that long without even realizing that the Master Sword is just in this forest that you can't really get through without figuring it out or looking up a walkthrough on how to get there. That's what I did. I have no shame in that. And it lets you completely explore the Great Plateau right off the bat, which is a great tutorial level. And the Great Plateau is a microcosm of everything that you're gonna kind of encounter throughout the world. And then once it, completely opens up, it's your adventure. You're in control. You are completely in control of Link the entire time from there on in. You're the one who determines where to go. You are the one who discovers things like Laurelin Village, and Kakariko Village, Gerudo Town, the Karakara Bazaar, Mount Hebra. You're the one who discovers this. You're the one who figures all this stuff out yourself. You're the one who gets to experiment with the gameplay, because it's very simple in some respects, but there are a lot of things that you could do. That the game makes no effort to teach you. Like, just as an example, you can ride a bear. There's bears that will spawn in certain places. The one that comes to mind is one near the Dueling Peak stables. If you sneak up on it, you can ride it. And you'll occasionally, once or twice I've encountered bokoblins that were also riding bears. You can ride a deer, and you actually have to for a shrine quest. You can make certain, potions and stews, and you have to kind of find out these recipes yourself through experimentation or organically through the recipes that are on the walls of each stable, or asking people around. Like, it doesn't ever tell you what you should do or tell you what you can do. You have to figure that out yourself, and there's so many ways you can figure it out yourself. It's not like it's not like the radio thing from Metal Gear Solid 1, where in order to get a hold of Meryl, I think her name was, you have to look at the back of the box or look it up online. There's ways, like, if you want to know how to make a fireproof elixir, you can ask someone how to make a fireproof elixir. There's a few people that'll tell you how to make a fireproof elixir. You could go to a certain stable and see it on the wall, or you could be like, okay, I have this fireproof. I collected this fireproof lizard. It says that I can make a fireproof stuff if I mix this. So if I mix this with some monster parts, what happens? And it's a fireproof elixir, and it's so organic in the way it does that, and it's amazing. And Breath of the Wild deserved all the praise it got for that freedom, and I could go on the freedom to traverse the way you want. You got horses, you got shield sliding, you can climb up. The best way to get around is to climb up high and then paraglide down. But there's a lot of places like the Gerudo Desert and the Central Hyrule where you're not going to have a lot of vantage points to climb up and glide across. So you have to find other ways, like running, shield sliding. You can shoot fire arrows into the grass to create these updrafts that can then lift you up into the air with the paraglider. And it bends a lot of stuff to fit that freedom. All the dungeons and shrines end up being kind of around the same difficulty level because of that. And yeah, I can see why that can be a problem for some people, especially people who are used to the more linear structure of Ocarina of Time and Wind Waker, which I was when I played Breath of the Wild. So I don't think the bosses need to be as boring as it was. But this is a video about what games can do better than anything else, and what games have come out recently that the gaming industry needs to take long, hard looks at in order to progress the medium. With that said, the 10th video game I want to talk about is Bioshock. Bioshock, I think, pulls in a lot of the stuff together. Not all of it, but a lot of the stuff. It's very well written. It's very immersive. It's kind of a sim. There are no barriers between you and the game. No real cutscenes. There's no walls of text or dialogue. All the exposition is done in game through radio messages that you can listen to while you're exploring and fighting and stuff. There's a lot of options, a lot of different guns, a lot of different upgrades, a lot of different ammo types. 3 different ammo types for each gun. All sorts of plasmids. Some of them a little more directly, obvious. Like obviously, fire the incinerate catches things on fire, and the uses of that are very obvious. But then you got more nuanced stuff like cyclone trap, decoy, enrage, the one that makes them vulnerable to security cameras. And this is why Bioshock, and to a lesser extent the games that came before it, System Shock 1 and 2, are my favorite games. Is there is no barrier. There is no real thing that takes you out of the game. System Shock 2, not so much, because you have the upgrade screens and stuff, and that can be kind of but System Shock and Bioshock especially, like, any time that you're not playing the game is when it ceases to be a game. That's kind of the developmental mindset between those two games. That was the developmental mindset of Looking Glass Studios, and to a lesser extent, Irrational Studios with Ken Levine. And that's where I think games should keep going. Make them more immersive. Make them more detailed. Make them, less like movies, less like TV shows. Maybe even less like toy boxes, if need be. And make it to where the gameplay is fun, and the gameplay is just there. Like, as an inverse example, Skyrim. Why does Skyrim start with a turbo linear sequence? If Skyrim is supposed to be this open world RPG, why aren't there a whole lot of RPG mechanics, and why does it start with a 30-minute turbo linear set piece? If Metal Gear Solid 4 is supposed to be all about the story, why is the story so terrible? If Last of Us is supposed to be about people surviving in a zombie apocalypse, why is there not a whole lot of zombies or surviving zombie apocalypse stuff? What does a game strive to do, and does it strive to do it? And does it succeed? Like, those are things that you could really apply to any medium. Like, what is the movie trying to accomplish? How is it going about trying to accomplish this goal? And how well does it do it? Does it succeed in accomplishing that goal? And those are the same merits we should start judging video games on a lot more. But yeah, I think Bioshock is the most immersive game I've ever played. There's some like Deus Ex Mankind Divided and Breath of the Wild and Red Dead Redemption 2 that come close in a lot of regards. But even Bioshock honestly has its faults. No game is perfect. I don't think any game will ever be perfect. But yeah, these 10 games, Arkham City, Minecraft, Fortnite, God of War 3, Dark Souls, Red Dead Redemption 2, Heavy Rain, Deus Ex Mankind Divided, Breath of the Wild, and Bioshock, exemplify what video games are capable of and what games should strive to be more like. A lot of these games should be the rule instead of the exception, and the fact that they're the exception is why this last console generation has felt really bad, and felt very mundane, and felt by the numbers, and felt like they're not even trying anymore. And that's really the last word I have on this. The video game industry, studios like Bethesda, Naughty Dog, they need to start trying more. And that's all I had to say about that. I'm Mediocrity4. Thanks for watching.